Do you want to be a soldier in the New Zealand Defence Force? Well, they're looking to double the size of recruitment over the next wee while. It comes as the NATO boss, Mark Rutte, announced overnight that Europe is ready for war if Russia attacks.
How do we make sure that Ukraine stays as strong as possible? The peace talks are ongoing. That's good, but at the same time we have to make sure that whilst they take place, and we are not sure when they will end, that Ukraine is in the strongest possible position to keep the fight going, to fight back against the Russians, but also in the strongest possible position when peace talks really get to a point where they sit at the table.
Overnight, we heard from the Defence Minister Judith Collins and from Winston Peters. New Zealand is going to chuck $15 million extra into weapons for Ukraine. Joining us this morning is the former Defence Minister, Ron Mark. Ron, good morning. Good to have you on the program. Can you tell me what this money will be used for? Oh, you've got to unmute you. There you go. We've got you, Ron.
Yeah.
We've got you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
What is this
morning.
money?
How are you?
Good, mate. This money's going towards weapons for Ukraine. It's going towards military support as part of a NATO sort of pact. What kind of things would you expect that money to go towards?
Well, there's an endless list, Ryan. Everything from just buying drones, FPVs for a start. Every unit that I talk to, every commander I talk to is looking for more drones. Vehicles, I'm tired of talking to certain people in Wellington within the government about the need to hand over our surplus vehicles, the ones that we don't need, because I bought all the replacements when I was in the Well, with New Zealand First. We bought all the replacements that they're enjoying right now, including the Bushmasters, which replaced a whole bunch of LAVs. But they need vehicles, they need drones, they need a truckload of stuff. But even just money that will buy artillery shells, that alone helps. 15 million. And in the big scheme of thing of what they're burning per day isn't a lot. I just hope that there's money there for NGOs who are providing humanitarian work inside of Ukraine, as opposed to giving it to the UN or the Red Cross, who I've never seen there, never seen on the ground doing the sort of work that New Zealanders like Tenby Powell and Owen Polmana are doing every day, who actually live in Ukraine and operate there. But the money will be used very, very quickly.
What about the recruitment? Why aren't we getting... Because I looked at the numbers for last year. We had a goal of 800. We only recruited 700. And this is at a time, that's the last financial year, at a time when we got, record, high unemployment. What's stopping that?
Yeah, well, there's multiple factors, and I know that the government would like to say that, the thing that'll attract people into the military is deployments and hard equipment, capability, and that's true to a point. But what we're doing is we're bleeding the very people that we need to retain, the experienced people. I've been down to Burnham and to Wairau quite a bit over the last few years, talking to people, seeing people invited to be a speaker, and what I note is the number of people who are not wearing a rack of gongs on the left side of their jacket, their shirt now, because a lot of those people have gone, and the top warfighters we had have gone. So we need to address it from both ends. We need to address retention, and we need to address recruiting. But, it's interesting to see he wants to go back to 1938 and see how we bolstered up the numbers back there for World War II. Talk to the Ukrainians. They have mobilized. Talk to the European nations that are mobilizing right now. I think, one of the things that they need to do is talk to the Kiwis who are serving over there. What motivated, what caused them to leave, what caused them, and they didn't leave to take a high-paid job in Civvy Street. They went to fight for a pretty modest amount of money as a soldier in Ukraine. So talk to them about why they left. But certain people in Defence Headquarters don't want to talk to the Kiwis who have gone over to Ukraine. They're probably the most experienced warfighters we have in New Zealand right now. But I do that, and I think you need to seriously look at pay and conditions, because successive governments have whittled down pay and conditions of the military because they've been able to do it without being challenged. They don't have a magic police association who can hold them to account. They don't have teachers' unions. People like the teachers' unions and the medical unions who can all demonstrate and protest and riot in the streets for like the second, third, or fourth pay rise. The military end up sucking it up, and when they fall behind, and someone who's hiring truck drivers offers them, 20% more in their salary to drive a truck on State Highway 1. Well, if you've got a family and you're struggling to pay the rent in Devonport or Auckland, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
You're going to look after the family.
Ron, what about compulsory military service? What about, you don't get the dole until you do some time at Waioru?
Yeah, look, there's national service, and I've always been a believer in a form of national service that compelled New Zealanders between a certain age group to serve their nation, whether that be in Wellington Free Ambulance, whether that be in Red Cross, whether that be in the fire service, whether that be in the military. People should be given that choice, that opportunity to serve their nation. But I think there's a bigger issue, Ryan. New Zealanders just these days aren't like their forebears of 1938, where they felt compelled to serve their nation, and they just don't want to do that sort of stuff. So there's a bit of a social problem there in terms of social license. How do you get the nation to mobilise? That takes leadership, that takes charisma, that takes compelling argument.
Ron, is that because the war is so far away from us? Like to be fair, so was the earlier wars, but yep. They were far away too. But they perhaps didn't have. They felt like. Our forebears felt like they had more of a stake in that, as opposed to us with the one in Ukraine, perhaps.
Yeah, and isn't it ironic? You're actually right on the button, Ryan. But isn't it ironic that today's generation, who loves everything that the globe, the planet, the world has to offer them, and love travelling and job touring, don't seem to want to step up and accept that to retain that freedom, retain that liberty, someone has to fight for it and pay the price for it. And so we have a more selfish attitude within this nation than you did back in 1938. You had the experience of World War I prior to that, and people realised that if you want your freedom, if you want your democracy, if you want your choices, if you want your liberty, you want your civil rights and your human rights, so you've got to be prepared to defend that. And here's the thing. Back then, people understood that it's far better to fight a war of global significance in someone else's country than fight it on your own beaches and your own cities.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Ron, really appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for being with me as always. That's former Defence Minister Ron Mark.